Welcome to our deep dive, and today we're going to be exploring the black soldier fly. This tiny creature that's making a pretty big impact. We've got a stack of research articles here, and honestly, I was surprised by just how much buzz there is around
Mhm.
these little guys. They're tackling some massive problems like waste management, sustainable food production, even biodiesel.
Yeah, it really is remarkable how nature often presents us with these elegant solutions that we often overlook. And the black soldier fly, the BSF, is really a prime example. We're facing these global challenges, and here's this insect that has already evolved to address so many of them.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. The research mentions BSF larvae being these incredible waste eaters. So what's the deal with that?
Well, they're like nature's composting machines, but on a supercharged level, they can consume twice their weight in organic waste daily. And we're talking breaking down everything from food scraps, agricultural byproducts, even manure. So imagine the possibilities for tackling our mounting waste problem.
Wow, that's impressive. So they're not just reducing the volume of that waste,
Right.
but they're also making it safer, right? I read something about reducing harmful bacteria.
Oh, absolutely. Studies have shown that BSF larvae can reduce salmonella in compost by up to 90% and E. coli by a significant margin. This makes the compost safer for use in agriculture, and it reduces the risk of spreading diseases.
That's a game changer, especially in regions that are really struggling with waste management and food security. And the articles mentioned the Global South taking kind of a lead in BSF farming. What's happening there?
Yeah, well, the global south faces, unique challenges, and BSF farming is proving to be a surprisingly good fit. Take Entobel in Vietnam, for example. They're building Southeast Asia's largest BSF plant, with a goal of producing 10,000 tons of larvae meal annually. So that's a significant contribution to the local economy and the protein supply chain.
Wow, 10,000 ton. That's a lot from a tiny fly. That leads me to kind of a big question here. What exactly is larva meal, and why are we even talking about flies as a food source?
Well, it might seem counterintuitive, but BSF larvae are incredibly nutrient-rich. They're packed with protein and essential amino acids. This makes them a viable alternative to traditional protein sources, like fish meal and soybean meal, which both have their own sustainability issues.
So we're solving the waste problem and finding a new protein source at the same time. It sounds almost too good to be true. Are there any downsides or challenges to BSF farming?
Well, there are always challenges when it comes to scaling up any new technology. One is maintaining consistent product quality. BSF larvae are highly adaptable. They'll eat almost anything. But variations in the waste that they consume can impact the nutritional content of the final product.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you need to be careful about what you feed them.
Exactly. And then there's the challenge of scaling up production to meet that growing demand. For animal feed and other products, it's a balancing act between optimizing growth conditions and ensuring a steady supply of appropriate waste streams.
It sounds like we need to make sure that BSF farming is done responsibly and sustainably as it grows.
Absolutely. And there are also economic challenges, like competing with the cost of conventional feed ingredients. But the research indicates that BSF farming has the potential to be commercially viable, especially as technology improves and awareness grows.
From what I've read, BSF isn't just about animal feed. It's being explored as a sustainable alternative for aquaculture as well.
You're absolutely right. Aquaculture, especially fish farming, relies heavily on fish meal, and this puts immense pressure on wild fish stocks. Replacing even a portion of that fish meal with BSF larvae can significantly reduce that pressure. Studies have shown positive results replacing up to 50% of fish meal with BSF larvae in zebrafish diets, and other fish species are being investigated as well.
So we could potentially have fish that are fed with protein derived from our own waste. That's a pretty neat closed-loop system.
It is, and this idea of turning waste into resources also applies to energy. Did you know that BSF larvae are being explored for their potential in biodiesel production?
Biodiesel. Wait, we're talking about making fuel from flies.
Yes. BSF larvae have a high fat content, and that fat can be extracted and processed to create biodiesel. It's still early in development, but initial research suggests that BSF-derived biodiesel meets quality standards and could be a viable alternative to those fossil fuels.
Okay, this is blowing my mind. We've got waste management, protein for animals and fish, and now potentially even fuel. What else can these little creatures do?
Well, there's more. Researchers are exploring their use in everything from bioplastics and pharmaceuticals to combating plant diseases.
Hold on, pharmaceuticals, flies in medicine. That's a new one for me.
It might seem strange, but BSF larvae contain compounds with potential medicinal applications. For instance, they produce antimicrobial peptides, which are like tiny soldiers in their bodies that fight off harmful bacteria and fungi. Researchers are investigating these peptides for their potential use in developing new antibiotics and antifungal medications.
So we're talking about potentially tapping into a whole new source of natural medicines.
Exactly. And this brings us to another interesting area: BSF's role in fighting plant diseases.
Right. I read about BSF frass, the residue left after the larvae have eaten their fill, having potential as a biofertilizer and even as a disease suppressant. How does that work?
Well, it's fascinating. BSF frass is packed with nutrients and beneficial microbes. These microbes can help promote plant growth and potentially outcompete those harmful pathogens in the soil, creating a healthier environment for plants.
So not only do we get this fantastic fertilizer, but we might also reduce the need for chemical pesticides.
Exactly. And it all comes back to that idea of a circular economy, using waste to grow insects, which then helps us to grow more food.
We've covered a lot of ground here, but I know there's even more to explore. We've touched on waste management, sustainable protein sources, biodiesel, pharmaceuticals, even plant health. It's incredible how much potential is packed into this one tiny insect.
It really is remarkable, but as with any emerging technology, there are challenges to consider. One of the concerns mentioned in the articles is the potential for BSF to become invasive.
Well, that's a good point. We wouldn't want these helpful insects accidentally turning into a problem.
Right. That's why responsible farming practices and biosecurity measures are crucial. It's important to contain the larvae and prevent them from escaping, into the surrounding environment.
Makes sense. What about the safety of using BSF-derived products? I mean, if we're talking about using them in animal feed and even potentially human food, we need to be extra cautious, right?
Absolutely. Careful monitoring is essential. The waste used to feed the larvae needs to be free of contaminants that could accumulate in the insects and pose a risk further down the food chain. So that's why regulations and quality control standards are crucial for the long-term success of BSF farming.
So we're talking about establishing some clear guidelines for the industry.
Exactly. And then there's the hurdle of consumer acceptance. While BSF products offer so many benefits, some people might be hesitant about insects as a food source. The cultural barrier that needs to be addressed.
I can understand that. I remember when I first heard about insect protein, I was pretty skeptical. But then I tried a cricket flour protein bar, and it was actually pretty good. Maybe it's just a matter of getting people to try it and realize that it's not as strange as it sounds.
I think you're right. Exposure and education are key. Many cultures already include insects in their diets, and highlighting the nutritional and environmental benefits could help shift perceptions in the West. Plus, chefs and food scientists are developing innovative ways to incorporate BSF into those familiar dishes, making it more palatable to a wider audience.
Speaking of innovative applications, let's circle back to biodiesel for a second. You mentioned that BSF larvae have a high fat content that can be used to produce fuel. Can you tell us more about that process?
Sure, it's similar to other biodiesel production methods. The fat is extracted from the larvae and then chemically processed to create a fuel that can be used in diesel engines. The exciting thing is that BSF-derived biodiesel has shown really promising results in terms of meeting those quality standards and could offer a more sustainable alternative to petroleum-based fuels.
That's remarkable. So we're potentially talking about a closed-loop system.
Yeah.
Where we use waste to grow insects, which can then be used to create fuel to power our vehicles. It's a pretty amazing vision.
It is, isn't it? And this is just one example of the circular economy principles that BSF farming embodies. The potential extends beyond fuel to other areas like bioplastics, for instance.
Bioplastics. How do flies fit into that picture?
Well, the larvae contain chitin. It's a natural polymer that can be extracted and processed to create biodegradable plastics, so it's a sustainable alternative to those traditional petroleum-based plastics, which contribute to pollution and take hundreds of years to decompose.
So we're talking about reducing our reliance on fossil fuels and tackling the plastic pollution problem, all thanks to the humble black soldier fly. It's hard to believe how much potential is packed into this tiny creature.
Right, and we haven't even touched on the potential in pharmaceuticals.
Oh, right. We talked about those antimicrobial peptides earlier. Are there any specific examples of how those are being explored for medical use?
Yeah, researchers are investigating the potential for developing new antibiotics, which are desperately needed. As antibiotic resistance becomes a growing global threat, there's also interest in using them to develop antifungal medications and even wound dressings.
Wow, so these little guys could be key players in fighting infections
Yeah.
and improving human health.
It's definitely an exciting area of research, and we're still uncovering new possibilities all the time. One intriguing area is the potential for using BSF larvae to break down certain types of plastic waste.
Really? So not only can they be used to create bioplastics,
Yeah.
but they might also help us deal with the plastic waste we already have.
Exactly. Some recent studies have shown that BSF larvae can consume and break down certain types of plastics, like polyethylene, which is widely used in packaging. It's still early stages, but it opened up a whole new avenue for addressing that global plastic pollution crisis.
Okay, I have to ask, with all these amazing potential benefits, there must be some downsides to BSF farming, right? I mean, it can't all be sunshine and roses.
Of course, there are challenges. One of the biggest hurdles is the initial investment required to set up a BSF farming operation. The equipment and infrastructure needed for large-scale production can be expensive, which can be a barrier for new entrants into the market.
So access to capital is a significant factor.
Yes, and it's not just the initial setup costs. There's also the ongoing cost of maintaining a suitable environment. For the larvae to thrive, they're pretty adaptable, but they need specific temperature and humidity ranges to grow efficiently. This requires climate-controlled facilities, which can be energy-intensive, especially in regions with extreme climates.
So there are energy costs to consider.
Exactly. And then there's the question of competition. The animal feed industry, for example, is dominated by established players, using traditional ingredients like soy and corn, breaking into that market, and convincing farmers to switch to BSF-derived products can be tough, especially if the price isn't competitive.
But it's not just about the potential of the technology, it's also about the economics and market forces at play.
Precisely. And then there's the regulatory landscape. As BSF farming expands, clear regulations are needed to ensure the safety and sustainability of the industry. This includes guidelines for waste management, biosecurity, and product quality control.
It sounds like a lot of things need to align for BSF farming to truly reach its full potential.
It does, but the potential is so vast that it's worth the effort. Imagine a world where we can effectively manage our waste, create sustainable protein sources, produce cleaner energy, develop new medicines, and even tackle the plastic pollution crisis, all thanks to the humble black soldier fly.
It's a powerful vision for a more sustainable future. It really does feel like we've only just scratched the surface here of what's possible with black soldier flies. Where do you see this all going? What's the future of BSF farming?
Oh, the future is incredibly exciting. One trend we're seeing is a move towards increased automation and technological sophistication in BSF production. Imagine climate-controlled facilities that precisely monitor and control everything, from temperature and humidity to feeding regimes, all designed to maximize larval growth and ensure consistent high-quality products.
So we're moving away from those small-scale backyard operations
Yeah.
and towards a more industrialized and efficient approach.
Precisely. And with industrialization comes innovation in processing. We're seeing new techniques to extract proteins, fats, and chitin from BSF larvae more efficiently, allowing for a broader range of high-value products for various industries.
It's great to see that technology is playing a role in unlocking the full potential of BSF. But as we scale up, it's crucial to remember that sustainability aspect, right?
Oh, absolutely. Sustainability has to be at the forefront as BSF farming grows. We need to minimize the environmental impact of production systems, ensure responsible sourcing of waste streams, and maintain ethical treatment of the insects. It's about finding that sweet spot between economic viability and environmental responsibility.
It's about doing things the right way,
Right.
not just for profit, but for the planet as well.
Exactly. And that's driving interest in developing these closed-loop systems, where BSF farming integrates with other agricultural practices. So picture this. A farm uses BSF larvae to process its food waste, and then that nutrient-rich frass is used as fertilizer for their crops.
A perfect example of a circular economy in action. It seems like consumer acceptance is another key piece of the puzzle. How do we bridge that gap and get more people comfortable with the idea of insects as a food source?
Well, education is paramount. We need to showcase the nutritional and environmental benefits of insect protein and demonstrate how versatile it can be. Thankfully, chefs and food scientists are already developing tasty and appealing products that incorporate BSF, making it more approachable for a broader audience.
So it's about changing perceptions.
Yeah.
And helping people see insects in a new light. I'm curious, what about you? Have your perceptions of insects changed since you started working with BSF?
I've always been fascinated by insects, but my work with BSF has definitely deepened that appreciation. It's amazing to see how something so small can offer such significant solutions to global challenges. They're really a testament to nature's ingenuity and the interconnectedness of all living things.
This deep dive has been eye-opening. I started with curiosity about this tiny fly, and I'm walking away with a sense of hope for a more sustainable future.
Me too. The black soldier fly reminds us that sometimes the most unexpected places hold the most promising solutions. It encourages us to look at the world with fresh eyes, to question our assumptions, and to embrace the potential that nature offers.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of the black soldier fly. Who knew such a tiny creature could inspire such big ideas?